The morning my son told me I was being dramatic. He was standing in my kitchen, drinking my coffee, and wearing a bathrobe he had left behind when he moved out 11 years ago. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because I didn't know what else to do. His Ms. Preston Aldridge. And for 3 years, he had been living under my roof with his wife, Cassandra, and their 2 kids, treating my home like a hotel they'd never have to check out of. That morning, I had told him I was thinking about moving. Just thinking. Just saying the words aloud for the first time. And Preston set down his coffee mug, looked at me the way you look at a child who says something ridiculous, and said, "Mom, come on. You're not going anywhere." That was the worst part. He genuinely believed it. He was wrong. But I didn't know that yet. Not that morning. That morning, I just smiled, nodded, and went back to making breakfast for everyone. My name is Lorena Aldridge. I am 67 years old. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, in the same house my husband Ray and I bought 31 years ago. Back when the neighborhood was still half dirt roads and the nearest grocery store was 20 minutes away. We raised Preston in this house. We buried a dog in the backyard. We put in the porch ourselves, boards by board, one summer when money was tight and we had more time than sense. This house is not just property to me. It is the physical shape of my entire adult life. Ray died 6 years ago. A stroke, sudden and merciless, the kind that doesn't give you time to say the things you meant to say. One morning he was complaining about the neighbor's leaf blower. By evening, he was gone. The grief that followed was the loneliest thing I have ever experienced. Not because people weren't kind. They were. But grief has a way of emptying a house that no amount of casseroles can fill. Preston called me 2 weeks after the funeral. He and Cassandra were having financial troubles. He'd been laid off. Their lease was ending. Their daughter Lily was 4 years old and their son Braden had just turned 1. They needed somewhere to land, just temporarily, just until they got back on their feet. "Of course," I said. I didn't hesitate for a single second. I spent a week getting the guest rooms ready. I bought new mattresses. I cleared out the craft room I'd been meaning to set up for years and turned it into a space for Lily. I put a small crib in the corner of the other room for Braden. I was genuinely excited. The house would be full again. There would be noise in the hallways and little shoes by the door and someone to eat dinner with. I told my friend Paulette over the phone that I thought maybe this was exactly what I needed. Paulette was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I hope so, Lorena." Looking back, I should have asked what she meant by that. The first few months were wonderful. Really, genuinely wonderful. Cassandra and I cooked together on Sunday nights. Preston fixed things around the house that I had been putting off for years. A sticky door, a dripping faucet, the porch light that flickered in the rain. We watched movies together on Friday nights with the kids. I felt useful. I felt loved. I felt like part of a family again. But things began to shift, quietly, and so gradually I almost missed it. Cassandra started making decisions about the house without asking. Small things at first. She rearranged the pantry. She replaced the hand towels in the downstairs bathroom. She bought a new shower curtain without mentioning it, something cheerful and modern that looked nothing like the one Ray and I had picked out together at a little shop in Asheville years ago. I told myself, it didn't matter. It was just a shower curtain. Then she had the living room furniture moved while I was at a doctor's appointment. I came home and the room looked like a stranger's house. The armchair Ray used to read in had been pushed into the corner. The rug we'd bought at an estate sale in Chapel Hill was gone, replaced by something gray and geometric. "It flows better this way," Cassandra said when I asked about it. She said it the way someone says something obvious to someone who is slow to understand. I stood in the middle of my living room and nodded and said nothing. That became a habit. The comments came next. So gradually I barely registered them at first. If I was slow getting ready to leave the house, Cassandra would sigh and check her phone. If I asked Preston to look at something that needed fixing, he would say, "Yeah, I'll get to it, Mom," with a tone that meant he wouldn't. If I mentioned something I'd read in the paper, one of them would change the subject within seconds. I started feeling like I was taking up space that wasn't quite mine anymore. The moment I remember most clearly happened at a Target on a Tuesday afternoon. Cassandra and I had gone together to pick up a few things. I was comparing prices on dish soap. I know, but Ray and I spent years watching every dollar, and some habits don't leave you. When Cassandra appeared beside me and took the bottle out of my hand and put it in the cart. I already grabbed one, she said. Come on, I need to be back by 3. It wasn't the words. It was the tone. Patient the way you are patient with someone who doesn't understand things the way other people do. I laughed awkwardly and followed her to the next aisle. That night I sat on the back porch for a long time. The sky was doing something beautiful, all pink and orange out past the tree line. Ray used to love evenings like that. He'd bring out 2 glasses of iced tea and we'd just sit there and not say anything. And somehow that was enough. I thought about how I hadn't sat on this porch by myself in months. There was always something needed from me inside. A snack for Lily. A question about the Wi-Fi. Something. I wasn't complaining about being needed. I want to make that clear. I love those children more than I can say. But there is a difference between being needed and being used. And somewhere in the past year and a half, I had crossed a line I hadn't noticed until I was already on the other side of it. My granddaughter Lily was the one who finally said something. She was 6 by then, sharp as a tack the way some children are, picking up on things adults carefully pretend not to notice. We were baking together one Saturday, just the 2 of us, rolling out sugar cookie dough at the kitchen table. She was quiet for a while, pressing a star-shaped cutter into the dough with great concentration. Then, she looked up at me with those big brown eyes. "Grandma Lorena," she said. "Yes, baby. How come you always look like you're waiting for something?" I stopped rolling the dough. "What do you mean?" I asked. She thought about it. "Like how I look before I have to go to the doctor. Like you're kind of scared but you don't want anyone to know." I told her I was fine. I gave her a smile and redirected her attention to the cookie shapes. But her words stayed with me for the rest of the day and into the night, and for several days after that. She was 6 years old and she had named something I hadn't been able to name myself. I started paying closer attention after that, to the conversations around me, to the assumptions being made, to the way Preston and Cassandra talked about the future. When we redo the kitchen someday, if we ever put in a second bathroom, we should plant something in the backyard this spring. Always we. Never a question. Never an, "If that's okay with you, Mom." Just an easy assumption that the future of this house was theirs to decide. I told myself I was being sensitive. I told myself they didn't mean anything by it. I told myself a lot of things in those days to avoid sitting with what I actually felt. Then came the evening that changed everything. I had gone upstairs early with a headache, taken some aspirin, and was lying down in my room with the door cracked open. Preston and Cassandra were in the kitchen. I wasn't trying to listen, but the house is old and the walls are thin, and their voices carried up the stairwell the way voices always do when you most wish they wouldn't. "She's not going to do anything," Cassandra said. Her voice was calm, certain. "I know," Preston said. "She needs us here. She doesn't know how to handle half this stuff on her own." A pause. "She manages fine," Preston said. He didn't sound entirely convinced. "She forgot to pay the electric bill last month. She told us about that. She said she switched banks and the autopay didn't transfer correctly." "That's exactly my point." Cassandra's voice dropped slightly, but I could still make out every word. "Preston, she's 66. Every year it's going to get a little harder. The responsible thing would be for us to just take over the bills. For her sake." Silence. "She'd never agree to that," Preston said. "She doesn't have to agree," Cassandra said. "She just has to not notice." I lay completely still in the dark. My heart was beating very fast. "She doesn't have to agree. She just has to not notice." Cassandra kept talking. Something about how, if they managed the household finances, it would be easier for everyone. Something about how it was really for my benefit. Something about how eventually. And she said that word slowly, carefully, the way you say a word when you've thought about it for a long time. Eventually this arrangement would just make sense for everyone. Preston didn't argue. He made small sounds of agreement. The way you do when you want a conversation to end. I didn't move. I barely breathed. When the kitchen went quiet, I lay there in the dark for a long time. Ray used to say that the truth is not something that arrives, it's something that surfaces. It was always there. You just finally stop looking away. That night, I stopped looking away. I did not sleep. I lay in my bed and stared at the ceiling and thought about every moment from the past 2 years that I had explained away or minimized or forgiven before it was ever even addressed. I thought about the furniture being moved, the shower curtain, the way Cassandra handed things back to me at the store like I was a child, the way Preston called me Mom, in a tone that meant not now, the we and the our that had slowly replaced my and mine. And now this. She doesn't have to agree. She just has to not notice. I got up at 5 in the morning and made coffee and sat at the kitchen table in the dark. Outside, the neighborhood was still and quiet. A car passed on the street every few minutes. A mockingbird started up somewhere near the fence. I thought about what Ray would say. He would not say anything dramatic. He would take a long sip of his coffee. He would look at me over the rim of the mug, and then he would say, "So what are you going to do about it, Lorena?" Not what are you going to do to them. What are you going to do? I picked up my phone and texted my friend Paulette. "Can we talk today? I need your advice." Paulette Sims has been my friend for 28 years. We met at a neighborhood picnic before either of us had gray hair. She is the kind of woman who tells you the truth without apology and loves you for it anyway. She called me back within the hour. I told her everything, not a curated version. The whole thing, from the shower curtain to the overheard conversation. When I finished, there was a pause on the line. "Lorena," she said, "I know. You know what you have to do. I'm starting to," she exhaled. "Good, because I've been watching you shrink for 2 years, and it has been very hard not to say something." I laughed despite myself. "Why didn't you?" "Because you weren't ready." Another pause. "Are you ready now?" I thought about Lily asking me why I looked like I was waiting for something. "Yes," I said. I called my attorney 2 days later. Her name is Sandra Okafor, and she has handled my estate planning since Ray died. She is straightforward and careful, and does not waste words. I told her I was thinking of making some changes, and wanted to review my options. We met that Thursday. I told her most of what was happening. Not to build a case, just to make sure I understood what was mine, what I could do with it, and what I was protected from. Sandra reviewed my documents. Everything was exactly as it should be. The house was in my name. No shared ownership. No claims. No confusion on paper, only in practice. "You have complete authority over this property," she told me. "No one else's consent is required for any decision you make." Hearing it stated, that plainly was like being handed a flashlight in a room I had started to believe was permanently dark. I thanked her and drove home. That afternoon, while Preston was out and Cassandra was upstairs with the kids, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and started making calls. I reached out to a real estate management company that Paulette had recommended. I called a moving company. I called my college roommate, Winifred, who had been asking me to visit her in Savannah for 3 years. I did not make any of these calls with anger. That surprised me. I thought I would be angry. Instead, I felt something much quieter, something that took me a few days to identify. It was clarity. Over the following weeks, I made arrangements, carefully, methodically, without drama. I lined up a property manager. I met with a young couple interested in renting, a nurse named Tanya and her husband Greg, both in their 30s, steady jobs, excellent references, kind faces. I approved them. I signed the paperwork. I hired the moving company for a Thursday morning in September, 5 weeks away. I did not tell Preston. I did not tell Cassandra. I told Lily, because Lily noticed everything, and I could not stand the idea of her feeling ambushed. I sat with her on the porch one afternoon, and I told her that Grandma was going to go live in a new place, somewhere near the water, somewhere she had always wanted to go. I told her she could visit anytime. I told her I loved her. She looked at me for a long moment, then she nodded very seriously. "Will you have a porch?" she asked. "I'll make sure of it," I said. She nodded again, satisfied. The Thursday morning of the move, I woke up before dawn. The house was quiet. I made coffee and sat at the table one last time, in the way I had sat at it 1,000 mornings before, watching the light come up through the kitchen window, listening to the neighborhood wake. Ray used to say that some goodbyes are sad, and some goodbyes are necessary, and sometimes they're both at once. At 7 o'clock, I heard Preston coming downstairs. He appeared in the kitchen doorway in shorts and a t-shirt, hair still disheveled. "Morning," he said, reaching past me for the coffee pot. "Good morning." He poured a mug and leaned against the counter. "What are you up to today?" I set down my coffee. "The movers are coming this morning." He looked at me. Blinked. "What?" "I told you a few weeks ago I was thinking about making a change. I made the change." He set down his mug. "Mom, you're serious?" "Yes." He stared at me. The same expression he'd had as a boy when something didn't go the way he expected it to. Like the world had rearranged itself without his permission. "Where are you going?" "Savannah. I'll be staying with Winifred while I find my own place." "I've already found one, actually. I put down a deposit last week." "You?" He stopped. Started again. "When did you do all this?" "Over the past several weeks." He stood very still. "And the house?" I picked up my coffee mug. "What about it?" "I mean, what happens to the house? I've rented it." The words landed in the kitchen like something heavy dropped from a great height. Preston stared at me. "You rented it?" "Yes. A nice couple is moving in next month. I've already signed the lease." He opened his mouth, closed it. The color had left his face. Cassandra appeared in the doorway then, drawn by the silence the way people are drawn to a room when they sense something has shifted. She was in her robe, holding her phone. She looked at Preston, then at me, then back at Preston. "What's going on?" "Mom rented the house," Preston said. He sounded like he was still trying to understand it himself. Cassandra's expression changed. "I'm sorry?" "She rented the house, and she's moving to Savannah." Cassandra turned to me. Her voice was very careful. "Lorena, this is our home." I looked at her steadily. "This is my home," I said, not unkindly, just clearly. "It has always been my home. You have been welcome guests in it, and I have been grateful for these years together. But this house belongs to me." "We've been here for 3 years," she said. The careful tone was fraying. "I know. We've invested in this place. You've been paying no rent," I said. Still calm. "Which I offered, freely, because I love my son and my grandchildren, and I wanted to help you through a difficult time. But the house is mine. The deed is in my name. I have every right to make this decision. And I've made it." Outside, the sound of a large vehicle turned onto the street. All 3 of us heard it. Cassandra moved toward the front window first. She looked out and I watched her face as 2 moving trucks pulled into the driveway. Professional, deliberate, impossible to dismiss. She turned back to me. Her voice had gone very quiet. "You actually did this?" I said, "Yes. You planned all of this, without telling us." I met her eyes. "The same way you planned to take over the household finances without telling me." The silence that followed was the most honest one we had shared in 3 years. She didn't deny it. That surprised me. She just looked at me, and something in her expression shifted into something harder to name than anger. Something closer to recognition. Preston had not moved from the counter. He was staring at the floor. The doorbell rang. I went to answer it. The crew lead, a tall man named Daryl, smiled at me. "Miss Aldridge, we're all set." "Thank you, Daryl. Come on in." The movers entered. They were professional and unhurried and very, very real. Within minutes, they were moving through the house with clipboards and dollies and the practiced efficiency of people who do this every day. Furniture wrapped, boxes loaded, a 31-year life carefully disaggregated and prepared for transport. Cassandra followed the movers through the house, arguing with each one in turn, asking who authorized this and what gave anyone the right. Every single time, the answer was the same. The homeowner. The paperwork. The lease. At one point, she stopped in the living room and pointed at the armchair. The one she had pushed into the corner when they first arrived. The one that had been Ray's reading chair. And said, "That stays. We use that." The mover checked his clipboard. "It's on the inventory, ma'am." "I don't care if it's on the inventory. It's the owner's property. I'm telling you it stays." "Cassandra," I said from the doorway. She turned. "That was Ray's chair." My voice was steady. "I would like to take it with me." She stared at me. Something moved across her face. Anger, maybe. Or possibly something older and more complicated. She stepped aside. The chair was wrapped and carried out. By 11 o'clock, the neighbors had noticed. Of course they had. You cannot hide two moving trucks and a family confrontation on a quiet residential street. Mrs. Grantham from across the way stood on her porch with a mug of tea. Old Mr. DeStefano paused his morning walk and watched with what I can only describe as respectful curiosity. Cassandra had retreated inside. Preston sat on the front steps, his elbows on his knees, watching the movers work. I sat beside him. For a while, neither of us said anything. The sounds of the neighborhood filled the space between us. A lawnmower somewhere. A child calling out down the block. The hollow knock of furniture being loaded. "I didn't know you were this unhappy," he said finally. I thought about how to answer that. "I wasn't unhappy," I said. "Not exactly. I was disappearing. And I almost didn't notice." He was quiet for a long moment. I should have said something. When Cassandra, he stopped. "You heard her talking about taking over the bills?" He looked at me. "You heard that?" "I did." He closed his eyes briefly. "I told her it wasn't a good idea, but you didn't stop it." A pause. "No." I looked out at the trucks. "That's what I needed you to do, Preston. Not to fight with her, not to take my side in some argument. Just to say, that's my mother's house and we don't do that." He didn't say anything, but he didn't look away either. Around noon, I went back inside to do one last walk-through. The house looked strange, larger somehow, emptied, like a sentence with the words removed, but the punctuation still in place. I stood in the living room for a long moment, in the kitchen, on the back porch where Ray and I had spent so many evenings with nothing but iced tea and quiet and each other. Lily found me there. She had been upstairs with Braden all morning, kept busy by Cassandra, I think, to keep her out of the tension. But she had slipped away and come to find me. And now she stood in the porch doorway in her purple sneakers and her hair half out of its ponytail. "Grandma Lorena, hey, baby!" She crossed the porch and stood beside me, looking out at the yard the way I was looking at it. Serious, considering. "Is this the last time?" she asked. "For a while," I said, "but not forever." She leaned into my side. I put my arm around her. "I'm going to come visit you," she said, "in Savannah. I'm counting on it. Do you think you'll be happy there?" I thought about Winifred waiting for me, about the apartment I'd found 2 blocks from the river, about the mornings I had imagined, just mine, quiet and slow, with no one needing anything from me before I'd finished my first cup of coffee. "I think so," I said. "I really think so." She nodded, satisfied again, the way she had been on the day I told her, like she had asked the important question and received the correct answer and could now move forward. I held on to her for another minute. Then I let go. The movers were finished by 2 in the afternoon. Daryl found me in the front hall and handed me a clipboard to sign. I signed it. He thanked me. The trucks pulled out. I stood in the front doorway. Cassandra was in the kitchen. I could hear her on the phone, her voice low and tight. Preston was still on the porch, or he had been. I wasn't sure where he was now. I collected my overnight bag from the front closet. My car was already packed with the things I needed for the drive to Savannah. Everything else was on the trucks. I stood in the doorway of the living room, bare now, quiet, already becoming someone else's space. And I said goodbye the way you say goodbye to something you have loved truly and long. Not with words, just with a moment of stillness. Then I walked to the kitchen. Cassandra was sitting at the table. She had put down her phone. She was staring at her hands. "The new tenants move in November 1st, I said. "I've left all their contact information on the refrigerator. You have 30 days to make other arrangements." She looked up. 30 days. "Yes." Her voice was very quiet. "Lorena." She stopped, tried again. "I know you're angry." "I'm not angry," I said, and it was true. I had been afraid I would be, but I wasn't. "I'm just done explaining my worth to people who should already know it." She didn't say anything. I picked up my bag, walked to the front door, paused with my hand on the frame. "I love my son," I said, not turning around, "and I love those babies. That doesn't change. But this house is mine, and my life is mine. I should have made that clearer a long time ago." I walked out. The September air was warm and smelled like cut grass, and something sweeter I couldn't name. I loaded my bag into the car, got in, adjusted the mirror. In the rearview glass, I could see the house, the porch Ray and I had built, the oak tree out front that had been a sapling when we moved in, and was now thick enough that Lily could not wrap her arms around it. Preston appeared on the porch. He raised his hand. Not a wave, exactly. Something more uncertain than that. A question. I looked at him for a moment. Then I drove away. Winifred Holt had been trying to get me to visit Savannah for 3 years. She had sent me pictures of the squares, the Spanish moss, the river at dusk. She'd described her neighborhood as the kind of place that talks you into some slowing down before you even realize you needed to. She was not wrong. When I pulled up to her house that evening, she was on the porch with 2 glasses of sweet tea already poured. She came down the steps and hugged me before I was fully out of the car. "You did it," she said. "I did it." She looked at me the way old friends look at you, seeing every year of the story at once. "How do you feel?" I thought about it. The way I feel about things now is different than it used to be. Slower, more deliberate, like I've stopped skipping past the answer to get to what comes next. "Lighter," I said. "I feel lighter." She nodded like she had expected that answer. "Come on, food's ready." I slept 10 hours that night. No anxiety, no lying awake replaying conversations. Just sleep, deep and uninterrupted, in a room that smelled like cedar and old books, with the sound of the city doing its quiet nighttime things outside the window. When I woke up, my phone had messages. Several from numbers I recognized. Cousins, a neighbor, Ray's sister. Word had traveled the way it always does, filtering through the family like water finding its level. People I hadn't heard from in months were suddenly very curious about what had happened. I didn't rush to respond to any of them. I made coffee. I sat on Winifred's back porch. I watched a pair of cardinals argue about something in the magnolia tree. Over the following weeks, I learned things. I learned that Cassandra had been telling certain family members for over a year that I had been struggling, that I had been making poor decisions, that she and Preston were there, helping me manage things. A version of events that was just true enough to be believable, and just distorted enough to serve a particular purpose. I learned that Ray's sister, a woman named Della, had been told I couldn't be trusted to manage my own finances. Della called me personally, furious on my behalf, and apologized for not calling sooner. "I should have known better," she said. "I've known you for 35 years. People hear what they want to hear," I said. "Not anymore, they won't," Della said, and left it at that. Preston called me 2 weeks after I left. Not a text, a real call, which told me he'd thought about it. "Hey, Mom, hey." A long pause. "I owe you an apology," he said. I waited, not for any one thing, for the whole thing, for letting it get to that. Another pause. I kept telling myself it wasn't that bad, that you were fine, that Cassandra just had a different way of doing things. He exhaled. "I know," I said. "That was wrong." "Yes, it was." Silence. Then, "Can I come see you, after you're settled?" I thought about it. "Yes," I said. "But Preston, you come to see me, not to fix anything, or negotiate anything, or make sure I'm making the right decisions. You come because you want to see your mother." "That's all I want," he said. I wasn't entirely sure I believed him yet, but I was willing to find out. The apartment I'd found was 2 blocks from the river, on the 2nd floor of a building that had been a warehouse once, a century ago. The floors were old wood, the windows were tall. The kitchen was small, but good enough. I had a porch. I'd kept my promise to Lily, with a view of the rooftops and a sliver of the river if you leaned just right. I set up Ray's chair by the window. The first morning I woke up there, I made coffee and sat in the chair and watched the light come up over the rooftops, and I tried to think of the last time I had felt this quiet inside. I couldn't find the memory. It had been that long. Lily called me on a Saturday, 3 weeks after I moved in. She had talked Preston into letting her call on his phone by herself. I could tell by the way she said hello, slightly formal, slightly proud of this small independence. "Grandma Lorena." "Hey, sweet girl. I told my friend Emma that you live by a river now." "I do," she said. "That's cool." A pause. "I think it's cool too." I smiled at the river out my window. "I think so too." She talked for 14 minutes about her teacher and a boy in her class who kept stealing her eraser and a caterpillar she had found at recess. I listened to all of it. I asked questions. I laughed at the right places. When she was winding down, she said, quieter, "Grandma, yes, you don't look like you're waiting anymore." I blinked. What do you mean, baby? Remember when I said you look scared, like waiting for something? A pause. You don't look like that anymore. In the pictures Dad took of you. I sat very still in Ray's chair, in my apartment, in the city that was slowly becoming mine. No, I said. I don't think I am. Several months later, Cassandra called. I almost didn't answer. Not out of hostility, but out of the same caution you develop after you've been careless with your own softness too many times. I had learned to be deliberate about who I let into the quiet I had worked so hard to build. But I answered. She was subdued in a way I hadn't heard before. Not apologetic exactly. Cassandra is not a woman who apologizes easily, and I have stopped expecting people to be different than they are. But something in her had settled. I've been thinking about what you said, she told me. About not explaining your worth to people who should already know it. I didn't say anything. I didn't know it, she said. That's the honest answer. I stopped seeing you as, she paused. I stopped seeing you the way I should have. I know, I said. I don't expect you to forgive me immediately. I already forgave you, I said. But forgiveness and trust are different things. One I can give right now, the other has to be rebuilt. A long silence. Okay, she said, like she was accepting terms. Okay, I said. It wasn't healed, but it was something. A crack of light under a door. Which is sometimes enough to start with. Preston and Lily came to visit in the spring. Just the two of them, for a long weekend. Lily arrived holding a drawing she'd made of what she imagined my apartment would look like. Surprisingly accurate, except for the dragon she'd included on the porch. For protection, she explained seriously. We walked by the river. We ate at a seafood place where Lily refused to try the shrimp, and then ate half of Preston's. We sat on my porch in the evenings and watched the light change. Preston and I talked in the way we hadn't talked in years. Not around things, but about them. Slowly. Imperfectly, like people who are relearning a language they once knew well and have allowed to go rusty. On the last morning, while Lily was still asleep, he sat across from me at my small kitchen table with his coffee and said, You seem different, Mom. Different how? He thought about it. Like yourself, he said, like the version of you I remembered from when I was a kid. I looked at my coffee. Outside, the city was waking up. Somewhere below, a door opened and closed. A bird was making a lot of noise about something in the courtyard. I think I got a little lost, I said. For a while, I know. He set down his mug. I'm sorry I didn't notice sooner. You noticed eventually, I said. That counts for something. He nodded. We sat in the quiet together. The good kind of quiet. The kind that used to exist between Ray and me on the back porch in the evenings. The kind where nothing needs to be said, because enough has already been said. And what remains is just two people, together, in the same moment. Ray used to say, the bravest thing a person can do is choose themselves. Not in a selfish way. In the way of knowing you are worth choosing, that your life belongs to you, that the people who love you, truly love you, will understand. I think he was right. I think the morning Preston told me I wasn't going anywhere, he genuinely believed it. Not because he was cruel. Because he had watched me make myself small for so long that he had forgotten, along with me, that I never had to be. The moving trucks were not the end of anything. They were the beginning. The beginning of a version of myself I had almost let disappear. The woman who had opinions about furniture and said them, who had a life that didn't require anyone's permission, who knew that love, real love, does not ask you to vanish in order to prove itself. I know where I am now. I know who I am. And for the first time in a very long time, those two things feel like enough.